In a peaceful green forest, where the sun painted golden spots on the mossy ground and birds chirped lullaby-like tunes, there lived a fluffy little bear named Benny. Benny was not a very big bear, but he had a very big imagination. He was soft and round with golden brown fur that shimmered slightly in the sun. His favorite thing in the world was his tiny blue backpack, always worn snugly on his back, even when he was just collecting sticks or pretending to be a forest explorer. Every morning, Benny would sit under his favorite tree, a wide old oak with roots like giant bear paws and leaves that rustled like whispers. He'd munch on honeycomb and gaze far, far into the distance. What he always saw, right there on the edge of the sky, was a tall, mysterious mountain. Its peak was almost always hidden behind fluffy white clouds, and sometimes Benny imagined the mountain was winking at him. "I wonder what's on the other side of that mountain," he whispered for the 100th time, licking a bit of honey from his paw. "Maybe there are fields of strawberries, or magical caves with glowing stones, or maybe a rainbow sleeps up there." Just then, a tiny voice chirped beside him. "Still dreaming about the mountain, Benny?" Benny turned and saw Millie, his very best friend. Millie was a small mouse with soft gray fur, bright black eyes, and a red scarf that she always tied into a neat bow. She popped out from under a nearby clover patch, dusting off her tiny paws. "You've been dreaming about that mountain forever," she said, stretching. "Why don't you stop wondering and start going?" Benny blinked. "You mean go over the mountain?" "Really?" Millie crossed her tiny arms. "You talk about it every day. If anyone can go over that mountain, it's you, Benny Bear." Benny's heart gave a happy thump. "You think so?" "I know so," Millie grinned. "Besides, I'm coming with you." With a happy squeal, Benny jumped up and did a little spin. "Then we'll go together." He ran back to his den and packed his most important things: 2 honey cookies, a bottle of berry juice, his soft blanket, in case it got chilly, and a tiny rolled-up map that showed the forest and a scribbled outline of the mountain. Millie packed some cheese crumbs and her lucky pebble in a walnut shell, which she wore like a backpack. When they returned to the oak tree, a few of their woodland friends had gathered: Mr. Owl, Miss Fox, and a sleepy bunny with long ears and even longer yawns. "You're really going, Benny?" asked Miss Fox. Benny nodded. "We're going to see what's over the mountain." Mr. Owl puffed up his feathers and gave a wise hoot. "Every explorer needs courage and curiosity. Lucky for you, Benny, you have both." The sleepy bunny gave a tiny cheer. "Bring back something sparkly." Benny waved to them all and stepped onto the soft, winding path that led toward the distant mountain. Millie clung to his shoulder, ears twitching with excitement. The forest sang as they walked. Leaves rustled gently, birds chirped cheerful songs, and butterflies danced like paper confetti in the breeze. "I've always wanted an adventure," Benny said softly. "And now you're having one," Millie replied, hugging his ear. As they walked, the mountain seemed to grow taller and taller, but instead of feeling scared, Benny's heart fluttered with joy. They didn't know exactly what they would find, but together, they were brave enough to find out. The path to the mountain led Benny and Millie through a sun-dappled forest filled with tall trees that swayed softly in the breeze. The deeper they walked, the quieter the forest became: no chirping birds, no buzzing bees. Just the sound of Benny's soft footsteps and the little jingling of Millie's red scarf. Before long, the trees began to thin, and they arrived at a sparkling blue river. It wasn't wide, but it rushed and bubbled with a happy, gurgling sound as it wound its way between the trees. Across the river stood a wooden bridge, old and crooked, gently swaying from side to side. "Oh my," Millie whispered, her eyes wide. "That bridge is wiggly." Benny stepped closer. The bridge creaked with every little gust of wind. It was made of wooden planks tied together with thick vines and strung between two trees like a ribbon. "We have to cross it to reach the mountain," Benny said, gulping slightly. Millie tugged on his ear. "Do you think it's safe?" Benny thought for a moment, then puffed out his chest. "We'll go slowly. One careful step at a time." Millie looked nervous but nodded. "I trust you, Benny." Benny put his paw on the first plank. It wobbled. He put one foot forward, creak. Then another, groan. The bridge wiggled like jelly, and Millie squeaked, hugging tight to Benny's backpack strap. "Oh, I changed my mind. I changed my mind." But Benny smiled. "We're okay. Look, see those rainbow fish down there." Millie peeked between her paws. Below the bridge, the water shimmered with silvery blue light. Dozens of tiny rainbow fish were darting back and forth in the current, leaping out now and then like they were dancing just for fun. "They're so pretty," Millie whispered. "They're cheering us on," Benny said with a grin. "Let's sing a step song." He made one up as they went. "Step by step, not too fast. Hold on tight and make it last. Creak and wiggle, don't look down. We're walking toward the mountain crown." Millie laughed between squeaks, and slowly, steadily, they made their way across the bridge. Benny kept his steps light, and the bridge bobbed like a gentle wave. The farther they went, the less scary it felt. When they reached the middle, a sudden breeze made the whole bridge sway. "Whoa!" Benny wobbled, arms out like wings. Millie squealed and squeezed her eyes shut. "It's just the wind," Benny called out. "Hold on." They paused until the breeze calmed. The fish below leapt again, glinting pink and green and gold. With one last brave step, Benny planted his foot on solid ground. "We made it." Millie peeked around and opened her eyes. "We really did it." Benny grinned, holding his arms wide. "You were so brave, Millie Mouse." Millie beamed proudly. "And you kept me safe, Benny Bear." They looked back at the bridge gently swaying in the breeze, then forward at the path ahead. It curled gently around the hill and disappeared into tall grass and wildflowers. Benny reached into his backpack and pulled out a cookie, offering half to Millie. "Snack break." "Always," Millie nodded, munching happily. The warm sun touched their fur as they rested on a mossy rock. The river sang beside them, and the mountain ahead seemed just a little closer than before. "Do you think there are more wiggly bridges?" Millie asked between bites. "Maybe," Benny said, smiling. "Or maybe singing flowers or flying clouds." Millie giggled. "This adventure is already more exciting than I imagined." Benny leaned back and watched the clouds drifting by. One looked like a bunny, another like a boat. "I think we're just getting started," he whispered. And with that, they stood up, brushed off the crumbs, and continued walking, paw in paw, friend by friend, closer and closer to the mystery that waited at the top of the mountain. The path grew softer under Benny's feet as he and Millie followed it away from the river. The ground turned from pebbly dirt to a smooth trail lined with soft moss and tiny white flowers that peeked up like sleepy eyes. The trees began to thin, and soon they stepped into a wide, open space that made them both stop in their tracks. It was a meadow, but not just any meadow. This one shimmered with light and color. Wildflowers of every shade, lavender, sky blue, lemon yellow, coral pink, swayed gently in the breeze. The air smelled sweet like honey and clover. Above, the sky stretched clear and soft, with cottony clouds drifting like slow boats. But the most magical part wasn't the flowers or the breeze. It was the music. La la la, up you go. Follow where the blossoms grow. Steps so light, the path will sing. Adventure waits for everything. Benny's ears perked up. Did you hear that? Millie looked around, her nose twitching. Are the flowers singing? Benny leaned down and whispered to a cluster of purple daisies. Are you singing to us? The flowers swayed together and replied in the softest, shimmery voices. Yes, dear bear, we sing your way. Climb the hill, don't drift or stray. Benny's jaw dropped. Millie. This meadow is magical. Millie jumped excitedly on his shoulder. I've never heard flowers that sing in rhyme. What else do you think they can do? As if to answer her, a butterfly with shimmering wings landed gently on Benny's nose. Its wings looked like stained glass, one side blue like the sky, the other orange like a sunset. It fluttered away, leading them deeper into the meadow. They followed slowly, Benny humming the tune of the flower's song. Millie twirled on his shoulder, pretending to dance like a ballerina. Then, under a tree with golden leaves, they spotted someone unusual, a rabbit, sitting on a rock, wearing a tiny brown cap and playing a flute made of bright orange carrot. He played a soft melody that seemed to make the grass bend and the petals glow. Benny waved. Hello there. The rabbit opened one eye, paused his tune, and smiled. Hello, little travelers. I don't often get visitors up this high. We're climbing the mountain, Millie explained, hopping onto the rock. Your music is lovely. The rabbit bowed his head. Thank you kindly. This is the Meadow of Melody. It's enchanted by kindness, which is why you can hear the flowers sing. Benny's eyes lit up. Do you know what's on the other side of the mountain? The rabbit chuckled. That's something every traveler must discover for themselves. But I do know that the next stop is the rainbow stream. Follow the butterfly, and you'll get there just fine. Benny nodded gratefully. Thank you, Mr. Rabbit. Do you like honey cookies? The rabbit's eyes twinkled. Very much. Benny opened his backpack and shared a cookie, breaking it in half and placing one piece gently in the rabbit's paw. Millie handed him a cheese crumb from her pack, just for good luck. Travel safely, said the rabbit, tipping his cap. And remember, when you listen kindly, the world sings back. As Benny and Millie waved goodbye, the butterfly fluttered once more, leading them along a soft path lined with singing flowers. The meadow behind them continued its gentle song, and the trees beyond seemed to welcome them with open arms. The sky had turned a softer blue, and the sun winked from behind a cloud. This place feels like a dream, Millie whispered. It's the kind of dream you never want to end, Benny said, holding her gently as they walked. And so, humming along with the meadow's melody, they followed the butterfly toward whatever adventure waited at the next turn. Benny and Millie followed the butterfly as it danced through the tall grass, floating gently like a petal in the wind. The trees became fewer now, and the mountain loomed even larger in the distance, its snowy top just barely visible above the clouds. They reached a sunny hill that sloped downward into a quiet hollow. At the bottom of the hill, Benny stopped and gasped. "It's so beautiful." In front of them flowed a stream unlike any they'd ever seen. It sparkled with every color: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet, shimmering like melted rainbows. The water moved slowly, twinkling in the sunlight, making tiny giggle sounds as it bubbled over smooth pebbles. The stones beneath were crystal clear and glowed softly, like they had captured little bits of starlight. "Oh my whiskers," Millie whispered. "Is that a real rainbow in the water?" "I think it is," Benny said, stepping closer. A small wooden sign stuck into the ground near the edge of the stream read, "To cross the rainbow, follow the colors in song. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue and purple, hop between. A rainbow rhyme," Millie said. "This must be how we cross." Across the stream, the stones formed a line that zigzagged from one bank to the other. Each stone was a different color, glowing faintly: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple, repeating again and again. "Let's try it," Benny said with a smile. Millie climbed up on his shoulder and helped him spot the pattern. "Start with red, then orange, and keep going in order." Benny carefully placed his paw on the red stone. The stone lit up with a soft hum. He stepped to orange. Ding! Yellow. Do. Each color made a different sound as he stepped. It was like playing music with his feet. "Green, blue, purple," he said, hopping along, Millie holding tightly to his ear. The stream laughed beneath them, sending tiny rainbow sparkles into the air. As Benny finished the color pattern one full time, something magical happened. A soft wind lifted around them, and the stones beneath Benny's feet began to glow brighter, then gently lifted off the water, creating a floating arch of glowing stones. "Oh!" Millie gasped. "We're flying." Benny looked down. The arch floated them across the stream, just above the water. They glided slowly, surrounded by misty colors and a sound like chimes in the wind. Benny and Millie looked around in awe. Tiny rainbow dragonflies zipped by, and petals from somewhere above floated down like paper lanterns. When they reached the far side, the arch gently lowered them onto the grass and disappeared with a shimmer. Benny wiggled his toes. "That was amazing." Millie tumbled into a patch of clover, giggling. "We floated like we were in a dream." Benny took out his map and drew a tiny rainbow over the stream so he'd always remember it. Then he picked up a smooth purple stone and tucked it into his backpack. "For our memory shelf," he said. Millie nodded. "We're going to need a bigger shelf." As they walked away from the stream, the rainbow colors danced in the puddles behind them, and the butterfly that had guided them so far gave one last twirl in the air before fluttering off into the clouds. The sky above began to change, no longer the bright sun of morning, but a softer afternoon glow with long golden rays painting the mountain path ahead. "Do you think there's anything more magical than that stream?" Millie asked. Benny looked toward the clouds above. "I think the mountain still has a few surprises for us." And so they walked, paw in paw, toward the clouds, where the path would grow steeper, and the air would turn cooler, but their hearts, oh, their hearts were so full of wonder, they barely noticed at all. The trail grew steeper as Benny and Millie climbed higher and higher up the mountain. The trees became smaller, the air turned cooler, and the grass gave way to round, smooth stones dusted with silvery moss. Every step felt like a step into the sky. "Are we walking on clouds yet?" Millie asked, peeking over Benny's ear. Benny laughed. "Almost. I can feel it in my fur." The path finally opened into a flat ledge high above the valley. They paused to catch their breath and look out. Below them, the world stretched out in layers: forest, river, meadow, and stream. Everything they had passed was now tiny and soft, like a painted picture on a giant canvas. The colors looked muted by distance, like someone had wrapped the world in mist. But the real wonder was above. Soft, white clouds drifted all around them, puffy and round, brushing past the ledge like giant floating pillows. Millie reached out a paw and touched one. "It's so soft. Like whipped cream." Then came a voice, gentle and smooth, like a puff of air through a flute. "Hello down there." Benny and Millie looked up in surprise. One of the clouds had a face. Round and smiling, with tiny black eyes and a pastel blue bow tie right under his fluffy chin. "I'm Puffy," said the cloud, floating closer. "You've climbed quite far. Are you headed for the top?" Benny nodded. "Yes, sir. We want to see what's on the other side." "Well, I can help you," said Puffy proudly. "It gets very steep from here, and your little paws might get tired. Would it be all right to ride on you?" Benny asked shyly. Puffy puffed out his cheeks. "Of course. That's what cloud taxis are for." Millie cheered and did a tiny flip. "Best mountain ever." Puffy stretched and reshaped himself like a fluffy couch, curling the sides up for safety. Benny carefully climbed on, cradling Millie in his paws. As soon as they were settled, Puffy rose gently into the air, carried by wind and whimsy. They soared slowly through the clouds, past flocks of glowing birds, gliding beside tiny floating flowers that swirled like confetti. The sky turned a soft peachy pink as the sun dipped lower behind the peak. "This is like flying in a dream," Benny whispered. "It's quieter up here," Millie said softly. "Like the sky is listening." Puffy hummed as he drifted. "I spend most of my days up here, floating around. It can be a little lonely, but I always love helping travelers like you." Benny gave a warm smile. "You're a wonderful cloud, Puffy. Thank you for helping us." Millie leaned over the edge and whispered, "Maybe next time, we'll bring snacks for you too." Puffy chuckled, "Oh, I only eat sunshine." They glided silently for a while, passing higher and higher up the mountain. The rocky slopes gave way to soft, snowy ledges and silver patches of wind-blown grass. Eventually, Puffy floated toward a cliff ledge wrapped in fog, just beneath the mountain peak. "Here's your stop," he said kindly, lowering them gently. Benny hopped off and helped Millie down. Puffy hovered for a moment, his face still smiling. "I'll wait just a little while, in case you need a ride home." "Thank you, Puffy," Benny said, placing a paw over his heart. Puffy gave a happy puff and floated up into the glowing sky. Benny and Millie turned to look ahead. A short winding path, lined with snowy tufts and sparkling stones, led to a soft glowing light behind the mist. The mountain's very top was just ahead. Benny took a deep breath. "We're almost there." Millie reached out her tiny paw and held his. "I'm glad we did this together." And with hearts full of wonder and soft clouds behind them, they took the final steps toward the peak of their mountain adventure. The final stretch to the top of the mountain was short but quiet. The wind whispered like a lullaby, brushing past Benny's fur as he and Millie climbed the snowy path. Little sparkles of ice clung to the edges of the stones, and the fog ahead shimmered with a golden light, like the sky was opening just for them. "I feel like the mountain is holding its breath," Millie whispered. Benny nodded slowly. "Me too." Then, all at once, the path ended. And they were there. They stood at the very top of the mountain, a wide, round space like a snow-covered stage, with the whole world stretched out below them. Benny's breath caught in his throat. "Oh, Millie." Below them, the forest rolled on forever, trees like green lace, rivers like silver ribbons. The meadow they had danced in looked like a tiny paint splash, and the rainbow stream sparkled like a jewel tucked into the land. Puffy drifted in the distance, still smiling as he floated gently near the clouds. But what took their breath away was the sky. Up here, the sky wasn't just blue. It was 1,000 colors: rose, gold, violet, and warm gray, swirling together like melted candy. The sun peeked from behind the curve of the earth, casting gentle rays across everything. Tiny stars had already begun to appear, twinkling faintly like blinking fireflies. Millie leaned against Benny's neck. "I've never seen anything so beautiful." Benny didn't speak. He just held her, eyes wide, heart full. Then, from the mist behind them, came the sound of slow, steady paw steps. Benny turned. From a curve in the stone came a figure, a large bear, silver-furred with deep, kind eyes. He wore no bag, no scarf, only a soft satchel on one side and a walking stick carved from a branch wrapped in ribbon. His face was full of gentle wisdom, and his voice was warm as a fire on a snowy night. "You made it, little one." Benny blinked. Are you the mountain bear?" The elder bear chuckled. "I am one of many. I live near the top, helping travelers who come to wonder." "To wonder?" Millie asked, tilting her head. The old bear nodded. "Everyone who climbs this mountain hopes to find something. Some search for treasure. Some search for answers. Some come just to see what lies beyond." Benny stepped closer. "I wanted to know what was on the other side." "And what do you think?" the elder asked gently. Benny looked around. The sky above. The forest below. The rainbow stream. The floating cloud friend. The flowers that sang. The wobbly bridge. The butterflies. His best friend. He turned back and whispered, "It's more beautiful than I ever imagined." The old bear smiled with soft, tired eyes. "Sometimes, the world gives us more than answers. It gives us wonder. You didn't find gold or crowns, little bear. You found songs, and friends, and memories. And that, my dear cub, is treasure enough." Millie looked up, her eyes misty. "I think we'll remember this forever." The old bear nodded. "That is the gift of a mountain. And when you go back down, take the sky with you. Carry it in your heart. Benny's paws trembled a little. Thank you, I didn't even know I was searching for that. The wind swirled gently around them. The stars above blinked slowly to life, and the sun gave one last golden yawn behind the horizon. Benny stepped closer and wrapped his small arms around the old bear. The elder hugged him back, slow and warm and silent. I'll always be here, the old bear said. Every time you look up. And then, like a cloud vanishing into the mist, the elder bear stepped backward into the fog and was gone. Benny didn't feel sad. He felt full. He took Millie's paw and sat down at the edge of the mountain. Together, they watched as the world below slowly tucked itself in, as twilight painted everything soft and blue. Tomorrow, they would climb down. But tonight? Tonight, they would just sit and breathe in the sky. The stars twinkled softly above as Benny and Millie curled up together on a smooth rock near the peak. The wind had stilled, and the mountain seemed to be holding them in a quiet hug. Benny whispered, I don't think I've ever felt this calm. Millie smiled and pulled her red scarf a little tighter. Me neither. But I think it's time to go home. Benny nodded slowly. Let's take the long way, so we don't miss anything. They stood and gave one last look at the shimmering sky. Then they began to climb down the path, step by step, with the stars lighting the way. As they descended, the sky began to shift from starry purple to a soft, dusky pink. The sun hadn't risen yet, but the edges of morning were starting to stretch across the land like a blanket being pulled over sleepy eyes. When they reached the ledge where Puffy the cloud had dropped them off, he was waiting, spinning gently in place, humming a tune made of tiny cloud puffs. There you are, Puffy called. I saved you a ride. Benny and Millie climbed onto his soft fluff, and with a happy whoosh, Puffy carried them down through the soft cloud path. This time, they didn't say much. They just watched. The world below slowly grew larger and warmer again, meadows, forests, rivers, and soft green hills returning to view. When they reached the base of the mountain, Puffy lowered them gently to the ground. You're my favorite passengers ever, Puffy whispered. And you're the best cloud friend in the whole wide sky, Millie replied, giving him a tiny kiss on the fluff. Puffy swirled with joy, then drifted off into the morning mist. Benny turned and looked toward the forest. We really did it, Millie. We climbed the whole mountain. And we came back, Millie added, with full hearts. As they entered the woods again, everything looked just a little different than before. Not because the trees had changed, or the river had moved, or the meadow had grown, but because they had changed. When they reached the rainbow stream, the stones sparkled just as brightly. Benny dipped his paw in and smiled. It's still singing, he said. The stones lit up again, and the rainbow arch rose slowly, just enough to carry them gently across. They waved at the flowers in the meadow of melody, who hummed a little welcome tune as Benny and Millie passed through. Mr. Rabbit was still there, playing a slower tune on his carrot flute. Welcome home, adventurers, he called. What did you find at the top? Everything, Benny said softly. Mr. Rabbit nodded. That's the best kind of journey. Back at the Wiggly Bridge, the rainbow fish leapt higher than ever, splashing joyfully as if to celebrate their return. The bridge still creaked and wobbled, but this time, Benny danced across it with a giggle, and Millie rode it like a swing. When they finally reached the edge of the forest, the golden morning light spilled through the trees like warm tea. The woodland animals were waiting, Mr. Owl blinking sleepily, Miss Fox brushing her tail, and the long-eared bunny hopping in excitement. "You're back," they all called. "We were wondering if you'd bring a story," said Miss Fox. Benny nodded. "More than a story. We brought the sky." The animals gathered in a circle under the big oak tree. Benny opened his little backpack and pulled out treasures: a purple pebble from the stream, a golden leaf from the meadow, a sketch of Puffy drawn on the map. Then, with Millie curled up beside him, Benny began to tell the story from the very beginning. He spoke of the wiggly bridge, and the singing flowers, and the glowing stones. Of the cloud that carried them, and the sky at the top. Of the old bear with kind eyes. And of how the mountain didn't give him a crown or a prize, it gave him perspective. When he finished, no one spoke. Not even Mr. Owl. Then the bunny whispered, "I think that might be the best story I've ever heard." Everyone agreed. As the day brightened and the sun rose high above the treetops, the forest felt fuller somehow. Like it had shared something important. Like it knew something now it hadn't before. And Benny? He sat back against the oak tree, placed the purple stone gently beside him, and let the breeze whisper through his fur. He didn't need to climb another mountain, not today. Today, he was home. That evening, the forest glowed with the soft light of lantern bugs and fireflies. A hush had settled over the trees, the kind that only comes after something wonderful has happened. Benny and Millie walked slowly through the clearing, the golden light of sunset painting everything in gentle colors. As they passed, woodland friends waved or nodded quietly. No one needed to say much. The mountain story had already traveled like wind through the branches. Benny's little den, nestled beneath the roots of the big oak tree, felt warmer than ever. Inside, everything was just as he had left it: his favorite blanket, his honey pot, and the tiny shelf where he kept his most special treasures. He carefully placed the purple stone from the rainbow stream right in the center of the shelf. Then he laid the sketch of Puffy beside it, and the golden leaf from the meadow of melody beside that. "I'll never forget," Benny whispered. Millie climbed onto the windowsill and peeked out at the night sky. "Look, Benny. The stars are already twinkling." Benny joined her at the window. The forest was quiet, lit by 1,000 tiny lights, lantern bugs floating like soft snow, and stars above that blinked in a sky deep and wide. "There's our mountain," Millie said softly, pointing to the distant silhouette. The tip of the peak glowed silver in the moonlight. Benny stared for a long moment. "I didn't think I'd really make it to the top." "But you did," Millie said. "And now you've brought the mountain back with you." Benny looked around. The scent of pine. The hum of nighttime bugs. The stars above. The memory of clouds beneath his paws. Everything felt like part of a dream, and yet, it was real. After a gentle stretch and a long yawn, Benny crawled into bed. His blanket smelled of honey and leaves. Millie curled up in a soft corner, her scarf tucked under her chin. Outside the little den, the forest hummed a lullaby, the trees rustled softly, the wind blew like a sigh, and an owl hooted from somewhere high above. Benny whispered into the quiet, "I wonder if the old bear is still up there." "I think he's in your heart now," Millie replied, barely awake. Benny closed his eyes. He could still see the glow of the mountain sky behind his eyelids. He could still feel Puffy's soft cloud body beneath him. He could still hear the rainbow stream giggle and the flowers sing. Everything was there. All of it. As he drifted into sleep, Benny dreamed, not of crowns or treasure or magic spells, but of walking beside a friend, over a wobbly bridge, toward the unknown with a brave little heart. And in that dream, the mountain stood tall, not just in the distance, but inside him. The stars blinked slower. The wind grew still. And the bear who went over the mountain smiled in his sleep. That's the end of our story. Thanks for listening with Blankie Berries. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if you enjoyed it. Good night, little dreamer.